5,000 years ago, a civilization vanished. They left behind cities, but no history. They carved thousands of symbols, but we cannot read a single word. This is the story of the Indus Valley Civilization, the culture that built empires in silence and disappeared without explanation. Welcome to the another world, where every artifact raises more questions, where the past refuses to speak. 1922. British archaeologist R.D. Banerjee uncovers something impossible in the Pakistani desert. A city that shouldn't exist. Mohenjo-daro, Mound of the Dead. But this was no ordinary grave. This was a metropolis frozen in time. Layer after layer of silt covered the ruins, as if the earth itself wanted to hide what happened here. The deeper they dug, the stranger it became. This wasn't primitive. This was advanced. Too advanced. Streets laid in perfect grids. Sewage systems better than Victorian London. Public baths with heated water in 2600 BCE. But here is what haunts archaeologists. There are no palaces, no temples, no monuments to kings or gods. It is as if they deliberately refused to celebrate themselves, or perhaps they were waiting for something that never came. Then there are the bodies, not many, not massacred, just scattered, lying where they fell. 13 skeletons found on a staircase, positions unnatural, as if they were running or hiding. No signs of violence, no weapons, no battle scars. They just stopped permanently. What were they running from? An invader? A plague or something? We cannot comprehend. The city tells us nothing because we cannot read their words, and that silence is deafening. Over 5,000 seals discovered, unicorn, like creatures carved with precision, and beneath them, script. Researchers have tried everything: pattern recognition, computer algorithms, linguistic analysis, machine learning. Nothing works. Some believe it is not a language at all, just symbols, merchants' marks, administrative tags. But that feels wrong. The Indus script appears on pottery, on tools, on tiny copper tablets, on city gates. This was everywhere. 400 different symbols identified. Some appear once, others thousands of times. There is structure here, intent, meaning. But without a Rosetta Stone, without bilingual text, the Indus people remain voiceless ghosts. Imagine a civilization where we know they spoke, but we'll never hear them. A library burned before we learn to read. This is the ultimate loss. Not their cities, not their art, but their stories, their history, their truth. And perhaps that is the most terrifying disappearance of all, to exist completely and be completely forgotten. So we turn to what we can understand, the bones of their cities, and even here, they confound us. The drainage system of Mohenjo-daro is the oldest in the world. Every house connected to covered sewers. Terracotta pipes, inspection chambers, soak pits, sloped precisely for gravity flow. This is civil engineering mastery. But here is what is strange. These systems are identical across 1 million square kilometers. Different cities, same design. Exactly. No evolution, no experimentation, as if someone handed them a perfect blueprint, and they never deviated. This level of standardization requires powerful central authority. But we found no evidence of kings, no rulers, no hierarchy. The bricks themselves are uniform, same ratio, same size, from Afghanistan to Gujarat. How? Every well is circular, every doorway faces the same direction, every street exactly 9 meters wide. This is control. Or perhaps this is something else. A culture so unified, so agreed. They didn't need kings. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro sits on the citadel, 12 meters long, watertight with bitumen, built for ritual purity. Steps descend from both sides. Small changing rooms line the edges. This was communal, spiritual, essential. Imagine the ceremonies held here, the prayers spoken, the beliefs that guided them, all lost, all silent. We found toys, whistles, dice, board games. They had leisure, they had childhood, they were human. Statuettes of dancers, jewelry of gold and precious stones. Art for art's sake, beauty for beauty. They domesticated cotton, the first in human history. They traded with Mesopotamia, with Egypt. They were connected. This was the Bronze Age's hidden superpower. 5 million people, dozens of cities, a civilization rivaling Egypt. For 800 years they thrived, generation after generation building, creating living. Children played in those streets, merchants haggled in those markets, priests bathed in that pool. They felt the sun on their faces. They loved, they dreamed, they planned futures that would never come. Because around 1900 BCE, something changed. The cities began to empty. Not suddenly, not violently, but steadily, deliberately, as if they knew. The quality of construction declined. Streets weren't maintained. Buildings collapsed and weren't rebuilt. They were leaving, but where and why? The Indus Valley was fertile. The cities were secure. What drove them away? Theory 1. The Saraswati River dried up. The sacred river mentioned in ancient texts vanished. Agriculture collapsed. Climate change. Monsoons shifted. Rains failed. Year after year of drought turned gardens into dust. The lifeblood of their civilization disappeared, and they had no choice but to follow the water. Theory 2. Tectonic shifts, earthquakes. The Indus River changed course. Floods destroyed infrastructure repeatedly. Perhaps the cities were rebuilt after each disaster, again and again, until they simply couldn't anymore. Theory 3. They were invaded. The Aryans came from the north, but there is no evidence of battle, no burned cities, no mass graves. The truth might be simpler and stranger. They just left, choosing small villages over grand cities, simplicity over complexity. Perhaps the experiment of civilization felt wrong. Perhaps they returned to older ways. Perhaps complexity itself was the problem. Or perhaps we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe they didn't vanish. Maybe they just stopped being visible to us. Their blood flows in millions today. Their engineering genius persists. But their language, their stories, their truth remains locked. The Indus Valley Civilization achieved everything a society could want, and then chose to walk away. What did they know that we don't? What did they understand about permanence, about empires, about the cost of grandeur? I'm your guide to vanished worlds. If you want to know what we learned from the next lost civilization, follow this journey. The past is warning us. We just can't read the message.